The following announcement has been paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hey guys.
Hello, ladies. Remember me? Let me talk to you, dummies.
It's now time
It's Vader time. TikTok.
It's showtime!
for the longest running wrestling talk show in history.
We are huge. It's gonna be cool.
You're where it's at.
You're smart like me.
Tune in each and every week.
You better keep listening, or I'll come out of your computer
And turn it on for you.
or else I'm gonna kick your stinking teeth in.
We've been known by a few names.
The needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few.
The Interactive Interview,
Interactive interview. Oh yeah.
Interactive interview.
The interactive interview.
Interactive interview. The interactive interview.
The Blaze,
Blaze 1260 AM. The Blaze.
The Blaze.
Blaze. The Blaze rock.
Interactive Wrestling Radio,
Interactive Wrestling Radio. Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive radio.
Interactive Radio. Testify. Interactive Wrestling Radio.
and a lot of other names.
Weekend Warriors of Wrestling. The Pile Driver. The Pile Driver.
3 Count Wrestling.
The Hours of Wow.
But it's all one show, the Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter.
The Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter, dude. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And your host from day one,
By ignorance or arrogance.
James Walsh.
Wake up, sleepyheads.
I could care less.
It all starts
Oh, tough guy.
Thank you very much.
Rush. Dumbed down.
Get out of my face. You win.
But I'm desperately out of time. So what you gonna do when Blaze-a-mania runs wild on you?
now.
And welcome back to another exciting interview with 3 Count Wrestling. We are here with PW Torch's own Wade Keller. Wade, how you doing today?
Doing very good. How about you guys?
We're doing pretty good. Well, this interview came as a surprise to me because recently we interviewed Simon Diamond, who went on a pretty long and detailed rant about the internet rating system. So, and PW Torch happens to have one very famous match rater, you. So, if you could, first off, could you please explain what your rating system is?
Yes, it's a system where generally we rate a match between 1 star and 5 stars, although occasionally we'll give out a dud or a negative star rating to something that's quite bad. And are you just asking, is that all you want, or you want kind of the rationale behind each of the...
Well, yeah, well, we have other questions to that, so go ahead and give your rationale.
Yeah, and as part of the Torch subscription, we mail out a VIP Express for after episodes of Raw and SmackDown and pay-per-views and that type of thing. And at the bottom of it, we always give out, we kind of explain the star rating system and what 1 star means in general and what 2 stars means and that type of thing. And to me, 2 stars means an average match. Just kind of an everyday match, pretty solid, acceptable. Sorry, I'm winded from going up 2 flights of stairs because I'm trying to get on a better phone line here. No, I'm switching. Sorry about that unprofessional moment.
That's cool.
So anyway, they 2 stars to me is just an average, everyday match. Nothing real spectacular. Nothing really wrong with it. And it kind of fulfilled its purpose, but not in a way that's all that particularly memorable. To me, a 1 star match can be a lot of things. It can be a really disappointing main event, or it can be a decent opener that lasts 5-6 minutes. A 4 star match alone can be good, if it's good enough, it can carry a show and certainly play a real good part on making a show really good. Again, it fulfills its purpose. It gets a crowd reaction, although that's not 100% required. If you're, there's special circumstances where a crowd might not react for a variety of reasons. It's a 5-hour show. The building's really hot. 2 guys have a great match, but the promoter didn't do his job in getting those wrestlers' personalities established ahead of time. But you kind of have to take those circumstances into account. Anything above 4 stars, you start getting into a match of the year category. Meaning, if you watch a lot of matches throughout the year, and you make it a pattern of watching all of the good ones, or as many of the good ones as you can, these are the ones that at the end of the year stand out. You remember them. There's something about them that you remember. And also, to be above 4 stars, it can't just be really good. There also can't be a lot of faults. You can't really go higher than 4 stars unless it's just off the charts if there's a bad finish, or if there's some missed moves, or if it's overly long, and the wrestlers kind of came across like they were filling time.
Yeah.
I just got done watching Bryan Danielson against Jimmy Rave, and it was 33 minutes, and it didn't need to be. The first 15 minutes could have been condensed to 5. They just didn't accomplish a lot in the first 15 minutes, so I marked it down for that. So that's kind of my spiel on that.
Okay, now let me ask you a question. When was the last time you actually gave a match a 5-star rating?
Well, the last time I gave 5 stars, people ask me this, and I always forget how often I do. I didn't give Joe against Kobashi 5 stars. Bruce Mitchell on the Torch staff did. There was one since this one, and I can't think of the most recent one, but the one before it was Benoit and, who else was in it? It was a tag match 2 years ago on a WWE pay-per-view. And I can't even think of all the contestants, but I picked it for Match of the Year a couple years ago.
Oh, okay.
So I probably give out 5 stars once every year or two. It's rare that there'll be 3 in 1 year. Like Razor Ramon Shawn Michaels was one of the first matches I gave 5 stars to when I was doing the Torch.
Are you talking about the ladder match?
The original ladder match, yes. And I gave it 5 stars because it and I explain this at the bottom of every email that I send out with my match reports. 5 stars something can be 5 stars in 1 year, and if it's repeated enough times, 3 years later, it might not be 5 stars, even if it's almost the exact same match. Because part of what I think makes a match 5 stars is it moves the art form forward a step, or it epitomizes the state of the art. And I don't think necessarily a match that's 4.5 stars in 1990 would actually live up to being 4.5 stars today, because it's progressed. It's like a great Sony PlayStation 1 game in 1998 isn't going to be reviewed the same way in 2006.
Very good analogy. Well, it depends on the game, because there's some pretty good old school games that don't stand the test of time.
Like OC Pro-Am for the original Nintendo. Never mind.
Yeah, but if you took but at the same time with something like that, you have nostalgia value in it. If you took like an 8-year-old kid, and you saw them next to an Xbox 360 and a Nintendo game, as good as that Nintendo game was back at the time, he's not going to give it a second look.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, you explained your criteria for rating the matches. Do you apply those to every single match?
I kind of have to, because I review Raw and SmackDown and Impact and every pay-per-view and every ROH DVD, and the readers like it when I rate matches, and so I do. I mean, whether if it's a 30-second match that has instant interference, I'll put NA, not applicable. In other words, it's just you can't rate it.
Right.
But for the most part, yeah, I apply pretty much that standard to every match. It is an art, not a science. It's obviously opinion, not fact, and it's really a shortcut so that you can compare notes. It's kind of a shorthand way of communicating quickly what you think about a match. But the thing is I don't just give who beat who and how, and here's my rating. The rating is sort of a quick glimpse at, here's kind of the overview of what I thought, but I almost always include comments right afterwards explaining it. And I always give description of the match and what I think worked and didn't work before I give the star rating. So in that respect, I rarely does a star rating stand alone. I really can't even think of a circumstance where it does.
So if, let's say, you had a TNA lockdown pay-per-view, you had a luchador match. You had a couple luchador matches. You had a few more of the traditional case type matches, and then you had I guess the 6-way X Division match. Those are all judged on the same criteria. You don't separate the lucha match from, say, a WWE match.
No, I do. I mean, I think you have to, because the wrestlers in a lucha-style match, or a cruiserweight-style match, or a brawl, are all trying to accomplish something very different. Or I should say the way they go about trying to accomplish the same thing is different. That's probably a more precise way to put it. If in the end, a lucha match is trying to engage the fans in an emotional roller coaster ride where They buy into what's going on. They lose themselves in the action. They care about who wins. Or, I guess, you can watch a match and not care who wins. I can watch a basketball game and not care who wins, but still really enjoy it. But in the end, you want to feel like you were taken on a ride. And in the end, you also want to feel like there was a satisfying ending to the match. And so I think you can pretty much apply that same standard to any match, but if the wrestlers clearly are coming from a different style, almost a different genre, and TNA may feature that on a show, yeah, you have to rate it differently, because obviously a lucha match you're not going to judge on stiffness in terms of how tight they lay things in, because they don't. That's not really the style. And you're not going to rate Joe Kobashi on high-flying moves or innovative high spots. So you have to take into consideration, did they accomplish what they set out to do within their style?
That's a fair point, but I want to ask you a question about Ring of Honor, since you mentioned it. And you mentioned that I think it was probably a Ring of Honor with the Jimmy Rave against Brian Danielson match.
Yep.
Okay.
Anniversary show.
What show was that? The
anniversary show.
Fourth anniversary show. Okay, good. Well, it's been a long time. I was at the first one, but okay. Ring of Honor is notorious for really, really long matches, sometimes longer than they have to be. A lot of people I notice on the internet, not necessarily yourself, but a lot of the people who like to play armchair quarterback, sit there and say, well, Ring of Honor has the best wrestling out there. But I think they're more confused by the fact that, okay, this match lasted an hour, that means it must be good, as opposed to, well, these guys on Raw have 10 minutes, if that, and they put on a pretty good match and tell a story. Now, I'm not saying that all matches do that. Obviously, most of them don't. But when it does happen, I think a lot of people don't give it the respect it deserves, simply because they're not getting an hour-long Broadway.
Yeah, I think if you set a really good magazine article investigating government corruption in front of readers or even a journalist critic, and you said, read this article and read that one, which one's better? And somebody says, well, the first article you gave me is much better, regardless of length. Let's say they're similar in length, but one is much better. It quoted people authoritatively. It was well written. I understood complicated matters because they explained it to me well. And in the end, I really felt like they were credible and fair. The other article, everything I just said, it was a little bit weaker on that. It wasn't as well written, et cetera, et cetera. And then if the person came up and said, well, wait a second, you don't understand. The person who wrote the first article you read had a staff of researchers, and they had 2 months to work on the story. And the other article you read was given to somebody relatively new or someone who's been around a long time, but they didn't have those resources. And besides that, the air conditioner broke in the office for a week, and they were just sweating that week and really couldn't concentrate well. I don't care. In the end, one article is better than the other. So to me, it would be disrespectful not to take that into consideration when rating something. But in the end, circumstances do lead to something being better or worse, and in the end, you have to judge the end product. That said, I'm one of my phrases, and it bugs people, and some people it bugs and some people it doesn't. I don't know how else to say it. Is oftentimes in a match I say, it accomplished its purpose, 1 star. But 1 star isn't an insult. It's just to say it is what it is. It was a 6-minute match that was there to kind of fill some time and lead into an angle right afterwards. It wasn't really there to steal the show. The wrestlers kind of knew it wasn't something that they'd put in their best of DVD collection. It was there to serve a purpose. Back to your original point, when you talk about the length of matches, I strongly disagree that the longer a match is, it should just automatically be considered good. I mean, the Bret Hart Shawn Michaels match, a lot of people raved about WrestleMania.
Let me cut you off. I don't like that match very much. I thought it was kind of a struggle.
Well, it was. I mean, I'm not as big of a fan of Bret Hart as a lot of people, because I don't think he advanced his style as his career went on. And I think that match showed a real limitation to what he could do. He had a really good formula. He has had some great matches, some of my favorite matches ever, Bret Hart matches. But I think at times he's overrated, and I think that match, both Bret and Shawn deserve criticism for not filling 60 minutes in a way where it seemed like they needed 60 minutes to tell that story. I mean, again, just the more recent match, because I just watched it today, Danielson against Rave. It did not need 33 minutes. I think they just said, let's go 30 to 35, and they had 10, 15 minutes of really good stuff, and I think the last 15 minutes of that match was fantastic. But the first 15, you could just skip it. I mean, there were a couple things in there, a couple storyline points in terms of Rave applying cattle mutilation and trying to escape, but and Danielson using the bottom rope to escape. That kind of had something to do with what happened in the second half. But it just seemed overly long. And I said that, and I would disagree with somebody who just looks at how long a match is and thinks that they see a classic. Final point on that, I think a lot of people think that because long matches don't happen all that often in the big promotions over the years because of a variety of factors. Promoters don't trust the patience of fans. There's limited time on house shows. Guys want to get in and out of town, whatever. So generally, historically, a long match is long because the promoter thinks he's got something special on his hands. And so usually long matches were really good. And it happens so rarely that when people in person especially get a chance to see one, maybe they get wrapped up in the moment and think they're seeing a classic when in fact it's just an overly long match that didn't have enough material to fill the time.
Okay, well, I guess the more pointed question, and this is where we'll start the debate, is why have a rating system in the first place? What's wrong with saying, I like this match?
Because it's shorthand to get you started. It's not perfect. I mean, there's in no way can a star rating system or any kind of that type of system be perfect. But you know, I know as a consumer of movies, I like to flip open a book and see if a reviewer whose opinion I respect, after reading them over time, likes a match, or I'm sorry, likes a movie. And the shorthand for it is 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5 stars, 4 stars. And that kind of helps me whittle down which movies I want to pursue reading a review about. And so I think the shorthand, it's a shorthand way of communicating something. And besides that, it's just really popular. I mean, I don't get a lot of complaints about the fact that I do it, and it's a good way to stir conversation. It prompts conversation among me and the staffers who write for the Torch, among readers on our message board. You know, I'll give them like the Benoit Finlay stuff has been a subject of a lot of conversation the last few weeks, because I wasn't real high on the matches, and other people were, and my star rating was quite a bit below average, and I had to defend why I did it. And in the end, you know, some people just disagreed with me. They looked for different things in a match, so they had it rated higher. You know, so be it. We kind of agree to disagree on what we look for.
So now that makes me bring the next question up, and one of the things that Simon Diamond, Pat Kenny, whatever you want to call him, was talking about was that wrestling is kind of a entertainment. It's subjective, and what you find entertaining, which is, you know, telling the story of the match, which I think is what everybody should find entertaining because that's the art of the business, might not be what the unfortunately newcomers to the business are looking for. They might be looking for, well, let's see somebody jump through a flaming table, and unless I see that, I'm not going to say it was a great match.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you could put on a show full of 2-star matches, and in the end, be praised for putting on a show that absolutely fulfilled its purpose. The fans were happy with it. You gave them the spots that they wanted, and they'll come back and buy a ticket again someday. The same way, I think that movie critics can give 2.5 stars, not 4 stars, to a horror movie, but say, you know what? The people this movie is targeting are really going to enjoy it because of this, this, and this. And I think that you can have quote-unquote garbage wrestling or a Hogan-style match that absolutely fulfills its purpose because that's what the fans are looking for. But when you're judging, because star ratings are what they are. They're not meant to say this match, because it's 4 stars, is going to help business. Because a 4-star match that a promoter doesn't promote in a context to actually turn it into drawing money won't necessarily draw. I mean, drawing money and becoming profitable and successful in wrestling is a concert of a lot of things going right. And having a good match is just one of them. I would argue that almost without exception, there probably is exceptions, but almost without exception, if you have a show that does everything right except the matches are 2.5 to 3 stars versus a show that's full of 3.5 to 4-star matches, I think without exception, even a newer fan or a fan who doesn't really discern consciously work rate and innovation and moving the art form forward, in the end they'll walk away more pleased with a show that has matches that most people who watch a lot of wrestling and have for many years consider better matches. I think in the end you will be more successful with that formula, but that doesn't mean you can't be successful if everything else falls into place, even if it's a relatively mundane match. when you compare it to what other wrestlers are doing in the industry at the time.
I still object to the whole star. Well, see, my problem has always been, and it's not, well, I include you in this debate, but there is also another person who uses star ratings who really upsets me, and I've been reading his stuff from the beginning, and that's Meltzer. I'll be nice, Meltzer. I guess this question would be, how do you see yourself different from, say, that guy?
As far as rating matches?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to have differences. I definitely respect Dave Meltzer for how he perceives a match, but I absolutely have disagreed with him on some high-profile matches in terms of the star ratings they received. The Michaels-Brett match he was quite a bit higher on. The Brett-Owen match in the cage that I thought was very disappointing. I was really high on, although I think he probably has admitted in retrospect he probably overrated it. Just, because at the time it worked for him, but, in retrospect he kind of realizes it probably wasn't the best match for the fans at that time. But it's funny, I'll get my Observer in the mail, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I wonder what Meltzer thought of this pay-per-view, and I'll pull out the torch, and I'll go down, and I would say 80% of the time we're within a half a star of each other, or I'd say 80% of the time we're within 3/4 of a star of each other. But there is, that 1 out of 5 matches where we'll be a star and a half off, and it's probably only 1 out of 50 matches. And I haven't done the scientific, it's just from anecdotal kind of comparing. But I'd say like 1 out of 50 times we're more than that, or 1 out of 100 times we're more off than that. And we look at wrestling differently, but we've both been rating matches long enough and watched enough matches that you just kind of fall into being comfortable giving star ratings. But it's not to say that, you asked me about Meltzer, but I'll do a second. It's not to say that if I rate a match 3 stars and then I go on my message board and everybody's saying it's a match of the year, like, there's 14 people on there just saying this match was great. It doesn't mean I don't second guess myself. I do, because it is an art, and I wonder, did I miss something? Was I in a bad mood? Was I distracted? Was I too hung up on something and I should have let go of that and more appreciated other things that were strong? I do take that into consideration, and I learn from it. And so, but I wouldn't say I get frustrated with Meltzer's star ratings, because, if you're frustrated with his ratings, you're probably also frustrated with mine, because I do think we agree a lot, unless there's just some high-profile matches that I disagree with Meltzer on, and you're more on my side than his.
Well, okay.
Let me jump in. Go back to what Simon Diamond said. He said that it's a subjective thing, and to give it a star system is not like saying, is not the same as rating a actual sports game. Whereas if a sports team wins, chances are that day they were better than the other team. Whereas wrestling is just entertainment. And I think his objection is, I don't think he has any delusions of being a 5-star worker. I think that's a fair assessment, but I do think that sometimes segments like, I'll take you to a non-match segment. I don't know where you stood on this, but I know another guy, Dave Scherer, was very against it last year when they were doing the WrestleMania Goes Hollywood commercials. And Dave Meltzer was saying, it doesn't want to make me buy the pay-per-view, but most of the fans thought, yeah, but you know what, it's kind of funny, it's kind of, whatever they call campy, and it's kind of funny, and whatever. I enjoyed it. Do you think that maybe people like yourself get a little bit too caught up in the, I don't want to say purism of the business or purity of the business, and forget about the fact that while it is sports entertainment or wrestling, it also is sports entertainment?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I would probably, if you disagree, that's fine. I have no problem with that. But I would say that I am somebody who is probably pretty good, even though I I'm a critic. I break down, I analyze, and I try to look at the big picture art form of the craft of professional wrestling and what happens inside the ring and how wrestlers tell their story and how they learn from each other and find new ways to surprise the fans and add twists and turns and take you on an emotional roller coaster ride. As much as that's a big part of what I do and what makes me a fan of wrestling as an adult who's outgrown cheering for someone because they're my hero and wanting to see someone get beat up because I don't like him. Because I think all wrestling fans start off at that phase. Well, not all, but most fans who are young start off at that phase, and they grow to appreciate it for different reasons and look for different things. That said, I actually think I'm pretty good, I think I'm really good about looking at appreciating things that have nothing to do with whether there's a great match on a wrestling show. And I personally, I think the WrestleMania Goes Hollywood type stuff, or the theme to the Royal Rumble this year with the McMahon family kind of spoofing themselves a little bit. I like that stuff. I think that's absolutely important when you get to be the size of WWE and you're trying to come across as not taking yourself too seriously and being about entertainment, not just wrestling, as Vince McMahon derisively says. But that said, ROH is about something different, and they're trying to set themselves apart. They're not going to do high gloss. We're superstars. We're at the Hollywood type level people. They're catering to a different audience, and they do a very good job at it. And that's why we not only rate matches, but after every edition of Raw and SmackDown and pay-per-views, me and the staff do a roundtable review where each of us submit a 3-4 paragraph review of the show. We put a score at the top of it, at 1 through 10. And then we explain our score and explain, here's what we liked, here's what we didn't like, did it accomplish its purpose, did it not? And so there are shows that are 8s and 9s that don't have one match that got better than 2 stars, because the point of the show is to promote a pay-per-view or establish a new personality or forward a feud. And then there's other shows that had a match. I gave it 2 stars. I wasn't a fan of it. It was okay. It had some strengths, some weaknesses, and then I went and read what people were writing about it, especially when people started responding to my 2-star rating, and other people had it at 3.5 stars, and I kind of, thought, and I didn't have it on tape anymore, I didn't have it on DVR anymore, I would have gone back and rewatched it because I kind of felt like, wow, maybe I didn't give it enough credit, but I went back and read my notes and kind of, heard what people were saying and why they liked it, and I still defend my rating just based on the memory of watching the match. I think that the moves they used were rudimentary and kind of behind the times and uninventive and it didn't do it for me. And I don't think it's good for business when guys stagnate their style and stick to the same style too many years and don't advance. So, but absolutely. I guess the short non-rambling answer is I definitely will second guess my rating if somebody I respect or a lot of people say, I think you're off base on this one. I don't know how often I've gone back and just I know I have rewatched matches before, but I can't think of anything like in the last year that I've done that to.
Okay, well, a couple of specific matches I'd like to ask you your current opinion on. There was a match on the Monday Night Raw, I think May 8th, where Big Show and Kane were having, instead of a typical big man, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
It was a slow technical match, but
wasn't it the night after they just had that abomination?
Yeah.
Are you talking about Kane's movie?
No.
I watched the movie last. My first wrestling movie at a theater ever I watched. I thought it was all right. I'm a horror movie fan. It was all right.
Yeah, but
anyway,
it's another
our match, and I guess my problem with that was that it served more than just being time filler. Big Show was trying to tell a story that he didn't want to hurt his friend. Plus it was different. You don't see big men doing technical, reversal hold. Yeah.
I looked it up. This is what I wrote about it. I gave it 1/2 star. 0.5. I said they get an A for originality for the content leading up to the finish. I think you can. It was I would defend it as a 1/2 star match. It was awkward and clunky, but it did fit the context, and that's where I think it's important to understand that people who think the star rating system is the be-all and end-all, it isn't. It is just one part of a concert of factors that play into whether something is successful or not. And there isn't always a play. I mean, it doesn't make sense to have Raw be one 4-star match after another. I mean, it just doesn't. It doesn't mean a half-star match. I mean, a half-star match isn't good on really any standard, and I don't think it was a good match. But it was novel, it was interesting, and it was better than the negative star match that they had the night before where they were missing moves left and right. I thought it was kind of funny, and I thought it was kind of gutsy of them, and it was probably more fun to watch than them missing moves. But in the big picture, I disagree with putting those two guys against each other in the first place. I don't think you should write yourself into a storyline where you put two giant wrestlers who aren't graceful in the ring with each other and expose their weaknesses. And by booking those two against, I wrote this in the roundtable review about that show when I went into more detail on my opinion on it, is I think the only time to ever take two guys who are giants like Big Show and Kane and match them against each other, because you know it's not going to be a good match. You know Jim Ross is going to have to apologize for it, or he's going to be at his best as an announcer to try to add drama to it, because the fans are just going to be distracted by the fact that it looks fake or choreographed and clunky. The only reason to ever do a match like that is when there's big money on the line and it's a dream match and the fans are demanding it, and then you really carefully book it, like Hogan-Andre, like Savage Warrior, like Hogan against Warrior. You intricately book it so that you hide their weaknesses and accentuate their strengths. But I don't think you take two guys like Kane and Big Show, who WWE believe can be draws over the long run to a certain extent, and put them in a position to look bad against each other. And I think they did that by just throwing them in there. It made sense from a storyline purpose, but I think you should book storylines with an eye on the end product of what's going to happen in the ring. And one of the faults, I would say, of Vince McMahon, he has many strengths and many weaknesses, we all do. I think one of his faults as a promoter is not keeping his eye enough on whether the feud he books, based on personalities and kind of the flow of his booking and the inertia of things, I don't think he keeps enough of an eye on when we sell this to fans as a match on a pay-per-view, will it be satisfying and entertaining? I don't think he looks at that often enough. I think he dwells more on the personalities, and that's how I look at Kane against Big Show.
Well, that's a fair point, but at the same rate, let me ask you this. They had, 2.5 minutes maybe?
Yep. To
do what they did? I'm just assuming, because I remember it was the start of something, but there was no real finish to it. Right. That said, would you have been as critical if it was Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit having the exact same move sequence?
Well, I think, would you agree that if Benoit and Angle did the same move sequence, it would have looked a little better?
I don't understand why. No, let me say this. Maybe it was.
I can't sing.
It might have been a half.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It might have been a half step slower, but I don't think by any means it was clunky. I do admit that their pay-per-view match was pretty bad, but at that rate, I don't think the moves they were doing were that clunky. For example, the bridge up, taking into consideration that Kane is 6'10", 6'11",
yep.
And he did a bridge up. That in and of itself, regardless if it was half speed or full speed or three-quarter speed, is pretty impressive.
Yeah. Oh, no. I agree. There were aspects of it that were impressive, but in the end, it was a 2.5, or it was, actually, they wrestled 5 minutes, not just 2.5, and there was no finish to it. And you're absolutely right, there were some surprising, jaw-dropping, eye-opening, I can't believe they do that, but I don't think that's the type of thing that fits their character. I don't think, it's like, I wasn't a big fan of Bubba Ray Dudley or Brother Ray doing a drop kick on the last TNA pay-per-view. I wasn't super against it, but I just don't think wrestlers should do things that don't play to the strength of what gets them over as either really tough fighters or really great athletes. I think you should wrestle within yourself. And, as great as Kevin Garnett is as an all-around player in the NBA, and I'm from Minnesota and I follow the Timberwolves and a big fan of his, he can play point guard and he can dribble the ball better than probably any 7-footer in the league, but I'm not going to say that when he dribbles the ball down court, he does it with as much style and grace and control as Sam Cassell or Steve Nash does. I can be impressed that he's able to do it better than anybody else I know at that height, but it doesn't mean he does it as well as Nash or Cassell or Jason Kidd. And it would be dishonest for me to say, well, he did something that is unusual, that's outside of his specialty, And even though it wasn't as good as those who do it as their specialty, because it was so unusual, I'm going to give them bonus points. I mean, you can give them bonus points if you want. I choose not to because I think it's bad for business to put giants, killer giants, in a position to do things out of context with their character. It's not going to be in my top 10 list of the worst things that happened in wrestling this year. But when I saw it, I thought, I don't think this does a lot for either character. I think it was just kind of a little riff that they did for fun. But I don't know that riffs for fun help business. But I also respect anyone who disagrees. I mean, I think you're explaining yourself well, and we just happen to look at it differently. Well, I mean, but I respect that can be looked at differently.
Right. Well, you just mentioned it, and someone on our forums asked about it. When did you come up with the top 10 when did you come up with like the year's top 10 and top worst idea?
Ask me that again. I'm not quite sure what you asked. I'm sorry.
We have 3 shows on our website, and one of the other shows did a top 10 list.
Yeah.
I guess because they needed time to fill or something. I don't know.
I like that.
Where did that come up with? The 10 best things of the year.
You asked me what I think the 10 best things of the year are?
No. Please ask where you got the idea to do the 10 best and the 10 worst of the year.
Oh, I just made it up a minute ago. I mean, we do the top stories of the year, and we don't really do like the 10 best or 10 worst on an annual basis or anything like that.
You should do the 10 worst. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I would look at the success of sites like WrestleCrap and things of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, I like lists because I like order. I like things to be put in context. I don't have the greatest memory for detail and in dates and that type of thing. So it helps me to have things in lists, and so I'm kind of list-oriented when it comes to how I organize things because it helps substitute for my memory. But I have to do kind of research and remind myself of what happened if I create a list. But Pat McNeil, who's a torch columnist, he's got a great memory. He remembers a lot more stuff in detail, and he does stuff like that sometimes, and I enjoy that. I mean, I think it helps put things in context, and you really know where someone stands when people put it in that format.
Okay, well, back to the ratings, the discussion, and this is from another of our members. Why does the WWE seem to get lower ratings even for good matches than TNA?
Gosh, I think if you put TNA wrestlers and matches on the phone, they'd say the opposite.
Have you gotten complaints about that?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, a lot of times over the years, wrestling promotion. I mean, during the Monday Night War, I mean, you had Bob Ryder, who was on WCW's payroll, also operating his website, his news website, claiming without any evidence, I was on WWF's payroll because I was rating Raw so much higher than Nitro. And of course, 4 years later, when the checks stopped coming in from WCW and he was trying to restore his credibility, and I don't know if it was before or after TNA started and was involved in that, he admitted that he was saying what he felt he needed to because he was getting paid by WCW, and didn't really believe that that Nitros were better than Raw at that point. I think people can get clouded based on just cheering for the home team. I think that there are people who are fans of TNA, and people who are fans of WWE. They consider that their home team promotion, and they're gonna have a soft spot for it. I mean, I'm that way with sports. I mean, I don't have an objective eye when it comes to the Timberwolves. I think they're going to finish in first place every year and have a chance to win the title, whether they do or not. And I'm going to look for the good and try to ignore the bad until the end of the year when they're out of the playoffs, and then I just turn on them. But I think it's fine for people who really consider a wrestling promotion their home team. And I know I'm not really answering your question, but I'm hoping to circle around to it. People who really get into a promotion, and that's kind of their home team. I mean, I was like that with the AWA in the 80s when I first became a fan of wrestling. The AWA was the only thing on TV in town, and I would get wrestling magazines, and I'd be mad because Ric Flair was always rated number 1 in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Top 10 list, and Nick Bockwinkel was like 2 or 3, or Rick Martel was 2 or 3, whoever was AWA champion, or Stan Hansen. And I got mad because I'm like, I'd be like, no, Stan Hansen deserves to be number 1. Ric Flair cheats to win, and Stan Hansen's, beating all these guys. And in my mind, I'd rationalize it. And PWI had their own system, and I don't mean to get too into the minutiae of how they rank things. But it's understandable that if you're kind of rooting for a promotion, you're not going to necessarily see things as objectively. But I would hope you would admit that's probably a bias of yours. I don't have a dog in the fight. It's my job to do this full time, and I have things I like better than other things, but I don't have an allegiance to one promotion over the other, because if I did, people would pay for my opinion because they would think I was being a homer for somebody, one or the other, and doing it 18 and a half years, people are going to see a pattern, and you're going to hear about it, and that's going to be your main reputation. So I try not to do that. So I don't think, to answer your question in one sense, I do not think I rate a match in TNA and WWE, which 100 people would see as equivalent. I don't think I rate them differently.
Can I put you on hold for 1 second? Chris Ferguson just got disconnected from the line.
Sure.
I apologize. Yeah, so I kept getting instant messages on my screen and wondering, what the hell is that? And it was like, I got cut off.
Wait, does that mean I have to call him?
No, yes, you do.
All right, so what do? I just hit flash?
Yes. Okay.
All right, 1 second.
Yes, we apologize for this. It's kind of one of those things that just happened.
Yeah, no problem at all.
He's on the cell phone, so obviously he's traveling around and got cut off. I do agree with what you're saying, though.
Hello?
04.
This sounds like the wrong number to me.
No, I hit the right number, and it says your call cannot be completed at this time. I don't know, it's weird.
Try one more.
Had that happen before.
No, try that one more time then.
All right.
Okay. I do agree with what you're saying, though, and I think the reason that he asked you about going back and watching matches is because I can think of a couple times I review albums for several websites, and I'll listen to an album and I'll think when I first get it, this kind of sucks. I went back a year later, no problem. A year later I'll pop it in and I'll be thinking, oh, maybe I was kind of harsh on this, because this kind of speaks to me now.
I think music probably is I would say music is more, I can't think of the word. The word is escaping. I think it's more appropriate to rate a CD or music differently after time than a wrestling match or a movie, because wrestling matches and movies are meant to be watched once, and music is meant to be listened to over and over again. It's rare that I buy a CD and from an artist I like and enjoy it and only listen to it once. Well, it never happens. And so I think music critics do a disservice to readers if they don't spend 2 weeks listening to an album semi-regularly, because that, at least for me, and I have friends who are completely different. They listen to a CD once and they know if they like it or not, and they never change their mind, or rarely do. I don't know whether I like a CD most of the time. I know if I really like it or really dislike it, if it's just the wrong genre. But if it's within the genre of band I like, it's hard for me to rate a CD till I listen to it a lot for about 2 weeks. That's just how my brain works. So I think revisiting music makes a little bit more sense. I think a wrestling match and a movie, which are meant to be watched once, should probably be judged based on that first time you watched it. It's almost unfair to go back and rewatch a match, because then you know how long it's going to last, what the twists and turns are, and when the finish is coming, and it kind of removes you from the drama of how it was meant to be experienced.
Another thing, one other quick thing, and we're back on the air, by the way.
Okay.
When I'm watching something along the lines of, say, SmackDown, or let's just take Raw. Well, I went to a concert on Monday night instead of watching Raw, so I came back and watched a tape of it, and on the forums, people were saying, "Oh, that was a really good episode of Raw. The storylines advanced a lot." But when I watched the tape, I found myself, fast forwarding through most of the segments, and I'm like, this kind of boring. If I was watching this live, I would think this would be boring. But I think that's why SmackDown gets such a bad rap, is because you already know what's going to happen, because unfortunately, we can't help the temptation of reading SmackDown spoilers.
Most of the time I do. I do avoid the temptation, even if I shouldn't say this because people will take advantage of it, but even when I post SmackDown results, sometimes I skim it for errors, and I format it and proofread it, but I turn my brain off. And so I don't, I try not to commit it to long-term memory, what's happening. Obviously you get a glimpse of what happened, but I try not to pay too close attention, because I do want to watch it like most viewers watch it. But you're right, it is, you can be swayed by opinions if people say it's a great show or not a great show. For some people that predisposes them to like it, other people who are contrarian will watch a show that people rave about, and they'll be looking for ways to pick it apart.
Right. Sorry.
You're having a hard time over there.
I guess we're, if we could get off the ratings thing and pick your brain a little bit. because we rarely have the chance to talk to people who know pretty much what there is in wrestling. I'll give you that. If we could pick your brain for a minute.
Sure.
What do you think TNA is doing right and wrong?
I think what they're doing right is that there's enough that's different about what they're doing that they have a chance to really stand out from WWE. I don't think you can be a distant number two. I think if they had the Ted Turner or the Time Warner money behind them, or if a big conglomerate came in and started bidding for the top guys, and it was a wrestling war, and they paid enough to meet Goldberg's overinflated price, and enough to meet what Rock deserves, and to kind of lure Steve Austin away from making movies to be a special guest on their show. Then I think they could do the same thing WWE does and try to do it better. But TNA doesn't have that kind of budget. They don't have that kind of head start as far as brand name. They don't have as good of a TV clearance, all that. And so they're trying to be different, and I think that's good. I think they absolutely should be commended, and this was, Jerry Jarrett founded TNA, and as he was in the planning stages of creating the promotion, he and I were talking, 3-4 times a week for hours at a time, and he knew the X division was what he wanted TNA's staple to be. He was a smaller wrestler, and he was in a territory that he promoted and wrestled in a territory where smaller wrestlers were the draws, and it wasn't a big match territory. So he kind of had that bias based on what he was familiar with, and he knew that WWE underutilized light heavyweight wrestlers because of Vince McMahon's overt and admitted bias against smaller wrestlers. And so he knew one of the major things for TNA was going to be the X division. Introduce state-of-the-art athleticism, that's jaw-dropping, that people have never seen before, who only have seen WWE, or people that only got glimpses of. But I think that's great. I think there's other things they do well. There's other things I think they do adequately. There's things that they do well that I don't even think they should be doing. And I know it sounds like a contradiction, but I think they need to stress more what makes them different, and I think they need to study the entire wrestling landscape more than they do, and can come up with really new ways to present the product in national TV. I think it's a lost opportunity to have a clearance on a major network like Spike TV and a great lead-in like The Ultimate Fighter, and open up any show with a Team Canada reintroduction. I just think that's an egregious, unforgivable error, in great part because the reason that team gets so much TV time is because Scott D'Amore is the head of the booking committee, and he wants to protect his guys. I admire him as a friend for doing that. I think it's a mistake as a businessman to do that, and I think his first obligation is to the Carter family, and really the wrestling industry, but really the Carter family, to do what's right for business, not just do what's right for Petey Williams and A1 and the whole Team Canada crew, and Chris Sabin is kind of part of that clique. And so I'm critical of that. I think that they should be focusing on character development, not one-dimensional gimmicks that are more reminiscent of the Mountie and Atom Bomb. And I think even with the Team Canada kind of fits that description. I also, after watching TNA going on 4 years, I have no idea what Chris Sabin is about. I can watch 2 ROH DVDs and know, without long promos, just based on the way they're presented, how they wrestle in the ring, a brief promo, and what the announcers say about them, I know a lot about Jimmy Rave. I'm just to grab 2 names. And that's the fault of the bookers. I also think their presentation of the show is good for that style, but I don't think that style, given their talent depth or the type of talent they have, is going to get them to be as successful as they could be if they would present it, if they would shake up the format a little bit. So there are things that they do well and they can be proud of doing well that I just philosophically don't think is the best thing for them to be trying to do well. And I think that's where sometimes there's misunderstandings or frustrations, because I'll be like, I can criticize a promotion in the big picture, but still say, well, that angle with Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner was really good. It was well done. Their timing was down. The fans reacted. But in the end, I think there's a ceiling on how successful they can be when they're taking this TV time and promoting wrestlers without room to grow. And I don't think Jeff Jarrett and Scott Steiner have a lot of room to be part of the future 2 years from now. And I think they need to take this TV time slot and make sure that they're doing what they did on the pay-per-view last Sunday, a week and a half ago, rather than what they did on Impact 4 days later, which was not really stress the fact that Samoa Joe had a career moment, and they barely mentioned it on TV. That's the type of thing that I think is at fault. I think sometimes they do things that they think will satisfy their critics, and then they but they do it in front of the smallest audience possible, don't do any follow-up on it, and then it ends up meaning nothing, and in fact it means less than it can in the future because it was already done and not treated as a big deal. So I mean, I can go on, but I mean, that's just kind of a few thoughts of what I think they do well and not well.
How about Vince's organization?
Just in general? What do they do well and don't do well?
Yeah.
I think Vince McMahon, as successful as he is, and with the deep cash reserves he has, and with just the inertia of doing things the way he's always done. I mean, if I were to shut down my newsletter and start it up 6 months from now, and I forgot everything that I had ever done with the newsletter for 18 and a half years, and just started fresh by looking at what's needed out there, or what would best fulfill a gap in wrestling coverage, I would probably come up with a different type of newsletter than what I will be producing 6 months from now, just based on the fact that there's a certain amount of inertia to what I do. There's a certain amount of I've always done this, the readers expect it, I'm comfortable with it, it fits within my routine, I try to do it well, some weeks I do it better than others, but maybe if I started from scratch I'd do it differently and be more successful. And I think part of what Vince does is what he's comfortable with. He's adverse to change because there's too much to lose if a brainstorm idea that's radically different than what he's done for decades flops. So I think he plays it safe sometimes. And that frustrates a lot of people, and that's why there's opportunities for TNA and Ring of Honor, there was for ECW, and there was for Eric Bischoff's vision of Nitro. There were opportunities when things were presented somewhat radically differently. And it can really catch fire, and I think that's why competition is great, and I think Vince is better when there is competition. I think I think the WWE style is really, really, really entertaining when it's done well, and when there's wrestlers who are passionate and interesting and into what they're doing, and athletically that the wrestlers who are being pushed can then, in the end, deliver when it's match time. And that's something I mentioned earlier. I just don't think Vince is necessarily always has his eye on that. What I think they do poorly is not thinking outside the box often enough and sticking to their formula too much, staying in their comfort zone. I think Stephanie McMahon should have spent, or should now spend years traveling the world. I think she should go to Europe and watch wrestling in front of 80 people there and see what do Europeans do on spot shows. Even more so, I think she should be watching in person Ultimate Fighting Championships. She should go to Japan and watch a Pride Dome show and look at the presentation, because just watching a Pride Fighting Championship event on pay-per-view, and you look at how they present the main event entrances of wrestlers, it's out of this world different than what WWE does, and they both do what they do very well. But I think what Vince doesn't do enough of, and Stephanie doesn't do enough of, is look outside of their world for ideas to freshen up what they do. I mean, there's a reason that Entertainment Weekly every 2 years completely reformats the design of their magazine, because studies have shown and history has shown you need to have fresh approaches to the same thing in order to keep people interested. And I think WWE could do that in a lot of different ways as far as their presentation goes. And one of my great disappointments with the brand split was that they didn't use SmackDown as an opportunity to try a lot of radically different things, a completely different approach to ring entrances, to lighting an arena, to the placement of the ring, to camera angles. Kevin Dunn got in his comfort zone, and they do what they got to churn through their work week. And so I think the major thing with Vince is think outside the box, such as cruiserweights. I mean, he never gets behind cruiserweights, and I think there's money to be made with a more athletic style. It doesn't mean it's going to show up the bigger wrestlers any more than Dwayne Wade shows up Shaquille O'Neal during a Miami Heat game. I mean, they both have their roles, and they both do them well, and the fans accept that they're different. They know Shaq could probably beat Dwayne Wade in a fight, but they know Dwayne Wade could probably beat Shaq in an Olympic sprint competition, and they don't care. They understand they're both good at what they do. And I think Vince doesn't think that way about different styles of wrestling. He's just content promoting the Triple H main event style.
Well, what do you think of, I mean, do you think this whole ECW thing that they're going to do you think that could possibly be successful at all?
Yeah. The final line of my cover story in this week's Torches newsletter, which I just put online earlier today, there's a cover story in ECW probably getting the sci-fi clearance, and I don't know, I haven't been online today, so I don't know if they made an announcement yet on it. But my final line was, there are simply too many variables at this point to confidently predict whether it will succeed or fail. It's one of those things where there's an infinite number of ways that they can promote ECW, and half of them, give or take, will lead to it being somewhat successful or very successful, and half will lead to it failing or flopping. And we just don't know enough yet about how they're going to present it, how much free reign Paulie is going to have. We don't even know if Paulie has free reign, if he's going to relive the past and prove to be a one-note genius who had his time and now is kind of behind the times, and he's a father now with 2 kids, and he's not thinking with a new vision.
You're kidding me? He's homosexual?
Yes.
I didn't. Well, there was some question on the forums at one point if he was or not. So
I
gotta admit, I'm kind of surprised.
Well, you know what? You can probably. There's a lot of people who've been married and had kids who.
Yeah.
I suspect he is. Who knows?
Yes.
I think ECW has a real chance to be successful. I'm excited about it because I think Vince does want to see what Paul can do, and I know Paul deep down wants to make Vince proud. He wants to impress Vince McMahon. That's one of the things that I think is most important in the world of Paul Heyman, because he grew up in New York, he watched the WWE product, and I think he wants to impress Vince McMahon, and he wants Vince to pay attention to what he does. And I know how proud he was to have Vince McMahon sitting next to him at One Night Stand last year while he was producing the show, and Vince got to see Paulie at work behind the scenes and also see the end result in the ring, and then show Vince in person, because Vince had never been to an ECW show, how different fans can respond to professional wrestling / sports entertainment, how differently they can respond in a way that Vince probably had never fathomed before, because the way fans respond to ECW is different. Some of it is bad, like the Masato Tanaka Mike Awesome match. The WWE wrestlers hated it, and the fans were popping for it, but they hated it for good reason. Because because WWE wrestlers do what they do 200 plus dates a year, and they can't have that kind of match all the time. Anybody can go out and hit each other with a chair over and over and do one high spot after another if they're protecting each other. And in the end, the fans are just like breathless. They're like, wow, that's a ton of action. But if there's no long-term selling and no context to it, and they condition the fans to believe that all of these moves don't really hurt because they're popping up at 100% and making comebacks without any time to recover, it really changes the way people look at the next Kurt Angle match when he's selling 3 suplexes, when Tanaka and Masato Tanaka and Mike Awesome weren't selling 27 moves in a row. So it doesn't mean Vince watching it was impressed with everything, but I think Paul wanted to impress Vince. So I think that there's a way for ECW to go out there and without the constraints of following the pattern of WWE and having that pressure to produce, because there's so much at risk, because WWE is a profitable, successful company, you don't want to take too many chances. ECW is this new kind of side project, and you can take chances, and there's less to lose. So I'm excited to see what he does. But I am neither confident nor pessimistic that it will have a chance, that it will succeed. It certainly has a chance to.
Well, that said, I grew up in New Jersey, right across the river from New York, and it was such a pain in the ass to try to go to a ECW event because they always play in the most seedy areas of the country.
Yep.
And the fact was, though, that's what worked for them. They played in front of maybe 1,000 people, if that.
Give or take that.
Yeah.
An ECW show that drew 300, and at ECW Arena when it was packed, and people going nuts, and it varied. I mean, generally around 1,000 is probably the average, or a little bit high.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a little bit hard for them. But yeah, I'm just saying, that's the kind of environment that the crowd would, start a chant, and before you knew it, the entire crowd was chanting it. How's that going to play in a venue, if the reports are true, and they're going to be basically taking velocity spot of 5,000 to 10,000 people? Will that still translate to ECW chants with people with their chests swelling up and their faces turning red?
I think if there's one thing Paul Heyman could change about the ECW business plan, and if he could change one thing, it would be finding money in the budget for ECW to find a nice small venue to promote their tapings at once every 3 weeks. And do 3 hours of taping in a small venue, maybe the same venue all the time, like TNA does, if budget is concerned, and you can do your set and do it, or, ideally he'd like to move around because you can burn out a crowd. I think that's probably Paul's number one word, is how do you take a crowd of 15,000 people or 8,000 people who showed up to cheer or boo John Cena and are used to the WWE style, and now you present a completely different context. I mean, it's like, if this Friday they switched reels and people who went to see No Evil got Da Vinci Code and people who went to see Da Vinci Code got No Evil, I mean, you're going to have a lot of dissatisfied people or just bored people. You know, if you went to see No Evil and you're watching Da Vinci Code, you might be bored or disinterested. So that's a huge risk. And I'm not quite sure if they realize how great a risk or how great a handicap that is for ECW to come across successfully on television if you've got the first 15 rows of fans who paid to see, JBL, paid to boo JBL and cheer Kurt Angle, and all of a sudden you're bringing out, Balls Mahoney. I mean, it isn't a good circumstance. I think it will work against them.
Well, we really can't thank you enough. I think you've given us a lot to think about. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we let you go?
Sure, yeah. If people don't visit pwtorch.com. We have a VIP membership. It's $5.95 a month, and you get a password, and you gain insight. I think we deliver just a ton of that $5.95 in the VIP site. Besides, it's an ad-free version of pwtorch.com. You get over 30 audio updates from me and the Torch staff each month, and full access to pretty much our entire archives of audio updates going back at least a year and a half. And then I've been doing the Torch for 18 and a half years, a weekly newsletter, and every week we put up a back issue from 5 years ago and 10 years ago. And we've been doing that for, I think, 3 years now, so we have like 250 back issues with cover stories of the Monday Night War and all kinds of the Owen Hart deaths and lighthearted stuff and heavy-handed stuff and that type of thing. And it's fascinating. If you want to learn about the history of wrestling, I mean, we work hard on every issue, and you can instantly gain access to read a lot about a lot of big stories from the past, and every week we add new ones. So that's part of the fun. Plus, we have email reports on what goes on, and a VIP forum where only members are allowed. I think it's a real strong forum. You're always going to have, people straying away from high-quality posts in any forum, but because it's password protected and there's a lot of long-term readers, you can learn a lot, have really good discussions with other wrestling fans. So anyway, there's a lot to offer there. So if you go to pwtorch.com, you can read all about it. I don't want to go on too much longer than I just did, but for $5.95 a month, I think it's a really good product, and it's worth trying. And if you've got it in your budget and you're a big wrestling fan, I would encourage you to maybe give it a shot for a month. If you don't like it, cancel, and no hard feelings. Great.
Well, once again, we really can't thank you enough, and we hope when the rating comes out, I'm not too negative.
No, I enjoyed it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys and your listeners.
Excellent. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Take care. We'll talk to you. If you want to come on again to promote anything, just let us know. We'll love to have you.
Anytime. Just give me a call.
All right, sure. Sounds good.
I'll do the same.
Take care of yourself.